You're watching the video on the Projectile Motion Lab, the pre-lab video. So I'm going to start off by giving you kind of the rundown of what we're doing here. So for this one, there's no purpose or there's no objective, but what you want to write down to start your lab paper is the goal. The goal is to take that marble. It is a solid steel marble. You're going to roll that ball down the incline shown here. You're going to roll it, whether you choose to roll it across the table or not is up to you. And then when it rolls off the table, it's going to fly through the air, and your goal is to make it land in that can. You're going to get to choose to place that can wherever you need to make it happen. But you can also see that the can is on this piece of paper, and you can see that there is a breakdown of grades that show you kind of what percent you're looking at based off of where the marble lands. So if you get the marble in the cup, you get 100%, and then you can see if you're a little bit, if you hit the can, you get a 90%, and if you are a little bit short or a little bit over, you get 85, and then so on. You can see that those gaps are laid out for you, and you'll be provided with that piece of paper. So again, your goal is to roll it off this ramp, possibly across the table if you choose to do it that way, in order for you to get it in that can. So you're going to need to write some sort of goal statement. The key here though is as you're doing the lab, when this marble rolls down the ramp, it would be really easy to let it roll off the side of the table, right? Go down to the floor and see where it lands and then place the can here. So a very key component of this is that you cannot let this marble leave the edge of the table. So as it's rolling down that incline, you either need to have something blocking the edge of the table, have someone stand at the edge of the table to catch it, but do not let that marble leave the table. It would be an instant disqualification, which means basically you'd end up with a 0 for the lab. So there's your goal. The next thing you need to have in your lab report is a list of materials. You can see that there's a tin can, there's some masking tape that you might use, there's the marble, there's this wooden track here. If you look at the wooden track, it's kind of shaved off on this edge. So kind of to give you an idea of how steep to make it, right? You don't want to make it too steep. So that's kind of using that incline. You can see kind of how steep it is. If you choose to go really, really steep, what ends up happening is that when the marble comes off the ramp, it ends up bouncing, and bouncing is very unpredictable. And it's also hard to figure out how fast it's going if it's that steep. So I try to stay away from making it too steep. And also the other side is not shaved off, and you don't want to have it roll off the table that way. You don't want to have it roll off the table this way, because then it's not flush with the countertop and you're definitely going to get some bouncing of the marble. You'll also notice that on this piece of wood there's various marks from previous school years that when you do set it up, you're going to want to make sure you're consistent, and so people have made little marks on there to make note where they release the ball, so that they release the ball from the same point each time. So your other materials are a ring clamp, a ring stand, you're going to have a meter stick, and then you can have a stopwatch, or you can use these photo gates. What a photo gate does is basically when you hook it up to the computer, a laser beam is going to go from that side to that side, and the way that we would use it is we would basically set it up so that it's a very accurate stopwatch. So you could set this up so it sits here, and that you can place another one so that basically when the marble passes through one photo gate, it would start the stopwatch, and when it goes through the other photo gate, it would stop the stopwatch. Now if you choose to use these photo gates, you'll definitely need to watch the end of the video, because that's going to show you how to set those up in the program. If you choose to use a stopwatch, then when it gets to the point where I'm showing how to use the capstone program, you can kind of ignore that situation. So again, there's the list of your materials. You're either going to list the photo gates or a stopwatch, but make sure you have a list of those materials written on your paper for when you come back into class. Right, so you're going to have the goal and a list of materials. Last part of the video that you need to watch here is just kind of a rundown of things you need to consider for your setup. So hopefully you're going to use this ring stand and ring clamp to set up this wooden ramp, essentially. Now, as far as the tape goes, remember that you want to make sure that however you decide to set it up, that from trial to trial, there's no sliding of this piece of wood up and down the ramp. If you slide this back and forth, you're going to change your angle, and so therefore your speeds are going to change. Now, you see lab groups do it a couple different ways. Some lab groups, they have this set up, and they try to figure out how fast the marble is going when it leaves the end of the ramp. Just realize that if it's going down a ramp, it's accelerating, and the question is, what's the rate of acceleration? Is it an object that's in free fall? If it's in free fall, then you know, use negative 9.8, right? Not 10, but 9.8, because you want to be accurate. If that object is not in free fall while it's going down the ramp, then you're going to need to figure out that acceleration. So some people will have it sit on the counter like this, they'll have it roll across the counter, and then it will leave the edge of the table, and at that point it becomes a projectile, and you need to know all the information so that you can accurately calculate for it to fly through the air and land on the ground to see where you're going to place that marble. Some lab groups will take this setup and they will move it a little closer, and it'll be something like this, where it rolls across the counter just for a very small distance. Again, you've got to figure out how fast it's going when it becomes a projectile, so that you can accurately know where to place the can. And some groups will go and they will take and set it like this, and then they will have it roll down the ramp. They won't have it make contact with the countertop at all, and they will try to predict where to place the can. So you've got to decide which setup seems to work best for you, how you're going to figure out the speed that it leaves the table with, so that you can make your calculations. And again, when you make your calculations, I would use 9.8 when it's a projectile, because that's its acceleration. It's more accurate than 10. So when you come into class, you need to have your goal, your list of materials. If you're going to collect data with multiple trials, then you need to have a data table. It should have a listing of what you're recording and the units of measurement that you're recording it in. And then the last is, if there's other things that you need to record, then you need to have just a list of those things. You know, whatever it is that you're just making measurements on. And remember, data is only measured values, not calculated values. So anything that you have to add, subtract, multiply, or divide would go into your data analysis section. Essentially, your data analysis section is going to have any things like that where you're adding, subtracting, finding averages, so on, and then showing the calculation work to where to place the can. So tomorrow when you come into class, you're going to be set up at your lab station, and you're going to figure out everything that you're going to do, and then at the very end you're going to tell me where to place. You'll be given a piece of paper like this, and the can will be made available. We're going to use the same can for every group, so you'll have this piece of paper sitting on the ground, and then I'll come by, I'll set the can in that middle section, we'll roll the marble down and see where it goes. But remember, the key here is do not let the marble roll off the table before the can is sitting on the floor. The first time that that marble leaves the table is when I'm sitting there with a piece of paper on the floor and the can, and we're testing to see if it lands in that can or not. If you decide to use the photo gates instead of a stopwatch, keep watching the video, and I will show you how to use that program and get it set up.
If you decide to use the photo gates, you're going to open Capstone, and once you open it up, you're going to, I would pick this setup. I would delete one of the boxes by right-clicking and hitting delete and hitting OK. So now you're going to go up to this and set up the hardware. Hopefully the yellow little arrows aren't there, but you're going to go down. You've got to switch to from analog sensors to digital sensors. And then once you're at the digital sensors, you are going to select the photo gate. If you click and drag it, it doesn't work. So what you have to do is you got to double click it. And then you want 2 photo sensors. So go back, choose digital again, and then hit photo sensor or photo gate. And now you've got 2 photo gates set up. You can close that window, open up the new window, and now you're going to go through, and you don't want to pre-configured. You're going to build your own timer. You're going to use both photo gates, so click both boxes. Click on next. And then from here, you want the timer to start when the first photo gate is blocked. You want the timer to stop when the second one is blocked. And now you are all set up. So now when the marble rolls through one photo gate, it is going to start the stopwatch. You can close that window, and then the second one is going to end it. So make sure on the digits you click on that button so that you can assign the timer to it. And now you're ready to record.